It's a real honor to have an opportunity to speak with you at the beginning of this important conference. For all of human history, we have harvested food from the water, from lakes and rivers, and from the ocean. These blue foods include fish, shellfish, seaweeds, sometimes captured in the wild, often cultivated in farms. Especially here in Asia Pacific, these blue foods are a vital part of food systems, a key source of nutrition, and often central to the lives of communities and their cultural traditions. For most countries, food is the most valuable resource that they extract from the ocean, a foundation for economic development. And it's also important to recognize that the production of blue foods has been one of the greatest pressures we put on ocean resources. But managed right, blue foods can be the key to sustainability. They can offer an opportunity for achieving our goals for food security, for economic development, and for conservation. Despite this potential, blue foods have been chronically ignored in debates and discussions about the future of food and the future of the ocean. To deliver the SDGs, we have to recognize that blue food lies at the very heart of the food systems of the future, and at the very heart of a thriving, sustainable, inclusive ocean economy. Over the past 2 years, Stanford, in partnership with the Stockholm Resilience Center and WorldFish, and more than 100 researchers around the world, have built the Blue Food Assessment, the first concerted look at the potential and challenges of blue foods. This assessment gives us new insights into the possibilities. It tells us first that blue foods are already important. They are a vital source of nutrition for more than 3 billion people around the world. They are an engine for economic development. For developing countries, revenues from the export of blue foods exceed the revenues from all other agricultural exports combined. And blue food production supports the livelihoods for more than 800 million people, and half of those are women. Blue foods are especially important in Asia and the Pacific. Asia Pacific accounts for most of the fish captured at sea and roughly 90% of all aquacultural production. And blue foods are also centrally important to consumption in this region. Across the region, they are a key part of diets. In countries like Bangladesh and Cambodia, for example, blue foods account for more than 60% of animal source protein. Second, we know that small-scale actors in fisheries, in aquaculture, in processing, are absolutely central to the blue food sector. When we think of seafood, we think of massive trawlers and sprawling shrimp farms. But in fact, the heart of the system and its future are small-scale actors. They produce most of the seafood that we eat. They account for most of the jobs in the sector, and they are central to the food security and economy of many coastal communities and coastal nations. Finally, the assessment tells us that blue foods will be crucial to building sustainable food systems and sustainable ocean economies. As we explore the potential of blue foods, it's important to remind ourselves of context, the massive footprint of our production of food on land, particularly the production of animal-sourced foods on land. Agriculture has taken half of the world's habitable land. It accounts for 70% of our use of fresh water. It is the biggest single driver of biodiversity loss. It is a major source of greenhouse gas emissions. And by far the biggest driver of those impacts is the production of livestock. Livestock production accounts for 80% of our use of land for food production and most of the greenhouse gas emissions. As a group, blue foods offer big advantages. Blue foods are already offering more sustainable options. Already, most blue food, the leading blue foods, the ones most widely consumed, are comparable to chicken in their environmental impacts. Chicken, the most efficiently produced animal source protein on land. And blue foods have the potential to be much better. But secondly, blue foods offer the potential for healthier diets. Blue foods are not just protein. They are rich in micronutrients, and most blue foods are richer in nutrients than land-based animals. Compared to chicken, for example, trout has about 19 times more omega fatty acids than chicken. Oysters and mussels, 76 times more B12, 5 times more iron than chicken. In fact, one recent study found that many coastal nations could solve the nutrient deficiency problems afflicting their population by making better use of the fish in their coastal waters. The Pacific Island states are an example. The shift to imported processed foods in that region has led to the highest rates of diabetes in the world. Non-communicable diseases related to diet account for 60 to 75% of premature deaths. So restoring blue food diets in that region is a key solution. If one looks across the whole range of blue foods, the opportunities are even greater, because blue foods as a group are extraordinarily diverse. Cows, pigs, and chickens account for 93% of the animal foods we produce on land. But if you look at the blue food sector, there are more than 2,500 species of aquatic animals that are captured for food, more than 600 species that are farmed for food. And this diversity offers incredible opportunities. It offers new opportunities for sustainability. For example, because as we know, some fishing practices and some intensive aquaculture can cause real damage. But there are options for fish to be harvested from the sea and for aquaculture production that are much more sustainable than land-based production can be. Small pelagic fish, for example, can be harvested with very little impact. And cultivation of some species like seaweeds and mussels can even be nature positive, leaving the environment cleaner than when they started. Similarly, while blue foods are generally healthier than terrestrial meats, some are in fact superfoods. To just take one example, mola is a small indigenous species that is raised in pond polyculture in Bangladesh. This little fish yields more than 5 times as much B12 as tilapia, more than 80 times the vitamin A of farmed silver carp. In fact, although mola comprises only a very small portion of daily diets in Bangladesh, it accounts for 90% of all the vitamin A consumed in that country, 56% of all the iron, 35% of all the zinc. And finally, the diversity of blue foods offers a unique potential for win-win-wins. For foods that are healthier, that are more sustainable, and that offer more inclusive livelihoods. And so the potential of blue foods is only beginning to be realized, and we've only begun to take advantage of it. The international community is recognizing the importance of blue foods. At the UN Food Systems Summit held in New York in September, blue foods emerged as a central theme. It was one of the 7 priorities for the summit enunciated by the scientific group. In the dialogues leading into the summit, more than 60 countries, including many in this region, included blue foods as a central part of the transformation of their food systems. Indonesia, for example, announced that it aims to increase fish consumption to 60 kilograms per year, which would mean 80% of the animal protein consumed in that country. And many of the small island development states, including Fiji and Palau, the Marshall Islands, and Samoa, emphasize that blue foods are centrally important to the intertwined challenges of food security, health, economic development, and climate resilience that they face. Coming out of the summit, 22 countries, again, including many from this region, have joined together to create an alliance for blue foods, committed to working together to raise blue foods on the food system profile discussion and to bring blue foods into the heart of their food systems. Over the course of this food symposium, we will hear of many exciting opportunities for technology, innovation, and finance for blue foods. Let me here just highlight 3 important areas. The first is the opportunity for innovation and finance to improve the blue food systems we already have. In capture fisheries, for example, we know that 1/3 of fisheries are overfished and that 20% of the catch is stolen. Better management of those fisheries offers many payoffs because it means that fishers can catch their quota with much less time on the water. That is better for them, they earn more money, and it's better for the environment, they produce much fewer greenhouse gas emissions. Development and deployment of new technology is key to realizing that potential. Satellite tracking of fishing vessels and video monitoring on board vessels enable governments to enforce the rules and to make sure that those who catch fish are catching them legally. Digital traceability systems allow markets to support those government efforts by taking measures to ensure that illegal fishers have no place to sell their catch. In aquaculture existing systems, we know that intensive aquaculture can be very destructive. destroying coastal habitats, causing pollution, and most important, through the impacts of the feed that is used in those systems, both wild fish and plants like soy, which often come from deforestation. There's been important progress in the last 20 years, and this is heartening to recognize. The conversion of wild fish to farmed fish has improved by 85% in the last 20 years. So it is possible to make progress. But there is big potential for further innovations, to develop feed that move away from wild fish altogether and rely on fish waste, on insects, on algae, and other sources. A second priority is to make sure that we are investing in the innovations and finance needed to develop the blue food systems of the future, the food systems that it can offer the win-win-wins I mentioned. The diversity that we see in the blue food system offers unique opportunities for blue foods like mola, the superfoods like mola, or shellfish and seaweeds that are much healthier, much more sustainable, and offer much better jobs. So the key is, how do we foster and finance innovation that capitalizes on those opportunities? The opportunity to develop new systems for cultivating seaweed, for example. Or to take another example, there are now a suite of startups who are looking at how do we create businesses that turn invasive, destructive species into profit, to harvest the sea urchins that are decimating kelp forests and sell them into the sushi market, to harvest crown of thorns starfish, which are assaulting coral reefs, and turn them into fertilizer. And there are opportunities not just in production, but in processing, for helping communities turn small pelagic fish, for example, into fish powder that lasts better on the shelf and that can be added into children's meals and help prevent stunting. The third domain for investment in innovation is to support the small actors, which we've mentioned are the heart of the system. There are key opportunities here for innovations in finance that find ways to get investment capital into the hands of these small actors. They can invest in developing their capabilities. They can invest in enabling them to restore and sustain the resources upon which they depend, which can develop the infrastructure, including roads, as well as cold chains, that are needed for them to access markets. To take just a couple of examples, there are now a variety of initiatives, startups of various kinds, developing applications, often smartphone-based applications, that put in the hands of a small-scale fisherman the power to track his fishing effort, to track the status of the resource, to manage his business, and to connect to buyers. There are similarly startups which are looking at how do you tap the power of AI to put real-time information into the hands of small-scale farmers. And there are initiatives looking at how do we actually help build the infrastructure like cold chains that make it possible for small producers to realize the value of their product. Coolers made out of coconut husks that allow fishers to keep their fish cool while they get back to shore. Solar-powered coolers, which allow them to keep the fish frozen until it's ready for sale. This is just an introduction. There will be many more opportunities that come to life over the discussions that lie ahead of us. But it's important to recognize that the potential here is huge and the need is urgent. Blue foods can and must be a cornerstone for a healthy and sustainable food system and for a vibrant, sustainable ocean economy. And that's true in this region more than anywhere else. There are pressing needs and huge opportunities for technology and finance to improve what we have, to develop the systems that we need, and to foster innovations for, with, and by the small-scale actors who are the key to the future. I hope this conference can spur all of us to rise to those opportunities. Thank you.